Channel, AS. My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. Today I would like to talk to you about victimhood. This topic is very relevant today. One hotly debated topic of victimhood is, are black people victims of slavery and discrimination, and should we strive for equality of outcomes via black people quotas? Of course Earth humans are free to form their own opinions and make their own choices, but from my personal perspective, yes, the average black person is a victim in some ways, because he or she still experiences negative effects from the legacy of slavery and past and present day discrimination. This is true. However, victims should still take responsibility for their own lives. It's also not a good idea to create a self-identity out of victimhood. Yes, I understand that some people may want to receive love or sympathy or help. However, creating a self-identity out of victimhood isn't the way to achieve that. Also, just because some black people are victims, doesn't mean that it's good to victimize other people to address that, for example through black people quotas, which is discrimination against white people. Victimizing one group to help another victimized group doesn't reduce the amount of unfairness in the world, it increases it. Just because some trees are hurting, doesn't mean that it's good to sacrifice the meritocracy ecosystem of the entire forest in order to help those trees. White people may also become more racist if they have a harder time finding a job because of black people quotas. Which is understandable. Being a poor white person is a hard enough life even without being discriminated against due to the color of your skin, through black people quotas. The solution to this issue is not having black people quotas. Furthermore, if you were in a hospital and you knew the hospital had black people quotas for surgeons, would you want a white or a black surgeon to operate on you? I think in that specific case, many people would want a white surgeon to operate on them, because they knew he got there on merit. Meanwhile, the black surgeon might have gotten in because of the color of his skin. And people want their surgery to go well. Obviously, without quotas, the black surgeon is just as good as the white surgeon. So yes, blacks are victims in some sense. No, that doesn't mean that black people quotas are a good idea. The identity politics people often engage in the fallacy that if outcomes aren't equal, then that proves there must be discrimination. Well, they don't apply this principle consistently, because if they did, then they would have to conclude that universities discriminate against men, because more women attend university. To be logically consistent, the identity politics people would have to demand male-only quotas for university. The counter-argument "but men are privileged" doesn't work here, because average men really aren't privileged over women in the West in 2023. Tunia has argued that in detail in previous messages. The fact that the identity politics people don't advocate for male quotas suggests that they're engaging in a help the female or minority in group, attack the male or white out group type of tribal politics. This isn't enlightened, or even progressive for that matter. This help the in-group, hurt the out-group agenda is the same type of thinking that happened in caveman times. The only thing that's different is that the in-group is now women and minorities, and the out-group is now men and white people. But that's still tribalism. It's just rainbow-colored tribalism. If you are interested in why black people on average are having worse outcomes than white people, well, certainly the legacy of slavery and unfair government policies and discrimination play a part. However, another big piece of the puzzle was explained very well by Dr. Thomas Sowell, who is a black man himself. Dr. Sowell has published an excellent 2-hour-long YouTube video titled "The Origin of Black American Culture and Ebonics." The best thing to do in my opinion is to acknowledge that there was slavery and systemic injustice against blacks in the past, and there are still individuals who discriminate against black people in the present. However, I think Earth society should move forward with a policy of non-discrimination in the present, which also means not having hiring quotas for certain groups. And individual people should take responsibility for their own lives, even if they were victimized in some ways. Also, when you read a news or political article, be careful that you may be getting manipulated if the article uses language to tell you what to think before it tells you what's actually going on. For example, if the article uses language to indicate that this person victimized that poor black person, before the article even tells you what actually happened, then the article may be trying to manipulate you. Or as another example, the identity politics people often say J.K. Rowling is transphobic, but they usually don't ever actually share the statements that Rowling made that allegedly were transphobic. Similarly, the right wing sometimes calls a person a communist or woke before even saying what that person did or said that was allegedly so bad. Be careful if before it's even shared what happened or what the person said, the person is labeled as a communist, woke, transphobe, extreme right, alt-right, Nazi, fascist, conspiracy theorist, misinformation spreader, etc. If someone tells you what to think, or applies a label, before they tell you what happened or what was said, then that's an attempt to get you to see the actual information through a particular lens. If labels must be applied, it's better to share the facts first and do the editorializing second. Okay, so we've covered one case of victimhood. Let's consider another case of victimhood. Are light workers victims? After all, some light workers would argue or deep down believe that light workers or the awake are victims, due to the slowness with which the sleepers to wake up, or due to the failure of the grey hats or galactics to take more direct action, or due to the censoring of the awake by big tech. After all, it's unfair that light workers and the awake have done their own inner work or research work, but they're not being rewarded for that in any kind of tangible way. Yes, light workers and the awake are victims, in a sense. Some grey hats would argue that the people aren't victims, in fact it's the fault of the people that they haven't engaged in more peaceful demonstrations or local politics. However, the sleepers obviously aren't demonstrating because they're sleepers. And the awake are in a sense getting trained into a learned helplessness worldview, because they know there's injustice, but they're also getting censored and mocked and not listened to, and the police and military who should take action aren't doing nearly enough. So what do you expect the awake to do? Still, even though light workers and the awake are victims, they're still responsible for their own actions. Just because someone is a victim doesn't mean that they should just sit on the couch and wait for other people to do things. That's not productive. Most people are victims in some sense, not everyone is necessarily a victim to the same degree. If everyone waited on everyone else to change, then nothing would happen. Yes, the situation that the light workers are in is in fact not fair to them. And yet, the best thing to do is to just keep moving forward. I would also like you to consider the following perspective. You can think of this as alternate glasses that you can put on. This other perspective doesn't invalidate the fact that this current situation is unfair to you. Just because I'm giving you a new pair of glasses, doesn't mean that you won't still have your old pair of glasses. And that old pair of glasses is still useful. This other perspective is that soul growth or soul expansion is just about the most valuable thing in the universe. This current life is important, but is also just one journey of your soul, and you'll retain the soul growth that you'll be achieving here on Earth. And light workers are attaining a great deal of soul growth right now indeed. When we galactics have landed, and also after this life, you will have more opportunities than the current sleepers do, because of the soul growth you're achieving right now. There are still many possible futures, many possible scenarios. No one knows exactly what future is going to unfold, because of the free will of Earth humans involved. In some scenarios, most of the current sleepers either transition, die, or they will keep living the rest of their lives in a harsh 3D reality while the awake people experience will go on with their lives in a pleasant love-based society. Still, it's also possible that the sleepers and the awake keep living in one society and that some of the sleepers die or keep living in denial, but most of the sleepers wake up. It's possible that the following will happen. From the perspective of the sleepers, one day out of the blue they will experience something completely crazy and unexpected, whether that's a mass landing of friendly ETS, or a mass arrest of leaders and a takeover of the media by the Grey Hats, or a solar flash event. Then after a while, the current sleepers will experience a life that's more pleasant and beautiful than they can imagine. Abundance and amazing new technologies will be released. After a while, they won't have to work that much anymore. They'll have access to physical and psychological healing. They may be able to visit beautiful other planets and interact with and possibly date extraterrestrials. They will have access to true and mind-blowing information. They'll have more freedom and health and abundance than they ever dreamed of. Do they wish to have a spa day? Do they wish to visit a mind-blowingly beautiful other planet? Do they wish to study the history of the universe? Do they wish to discuss philosophy with Venusians, or learn spirituality from Arcturians, or learn psychic abilities from Syrians, or make music together with Andromedans? Do they wish to have an orgy with Tunia-like women, or men like myself? Do they wish to ask a galactic matchmaker for help to find their true love? Do they wish to finally see my famous dance moves? It's possible that the current sleepers will experience, let's say, a century where every day is like this, because their lifespans will quite possibly be extended too. And the current sleepers will love it. And then, something will begin to gnaw at them. It will be slow and easy to ignore at first. They'll just push that unpleasant realization away. They'll go on another holiday, or they'll go study some topic, or they'll go have more sex or eat more delicious food. But it will keep gnawing. And gnawing. And gnawing. Eventually they will face the realization that while this current life is heavenly, their soul feels that it hasn't learned the 3D lessons yet. And this former sleeper will say goodbye to their loved ones and voluntarily leave their body and leave this heavenly blissful existence. After a while, they will then begin another life in another harsh, painful 3D world. Nobody will force this on them. They will choose this themselves. Why? It's because people's souls are part of them, and the soul craves soul growth, and the soul understands that it needs to learn its 3D lessons first. Just blissing out in 5D feels hollow and sort of unearned to the soul if the 3D lessons haven't been learned yet. Meanwhile, you current light workers will quite possibly either have the option to keep living your 5D life for several centuries. Or if you do choose to leave your body, your soul probably won't feel a need to have another 3D life, because it has already learned its 3D lessons during this current life. So, yes, this current situation is unfair to you. However, you are attaining great soul growth right now, which will pay off hugely in the future. And many of you are being offered your final 3D lessons right now. So, do what you have to do. Say what you have to say. If things aren't working out in your life, or if you are dealing with trauma or pain, then heal or learn the lessons you still need to learn. Observe your emotions. Feel your feelings. Have that uncomfortable conversation. Try to treat other people as well as you can. If your heart wants to do something and it's feasible, then go do it. And hang on, I know that some of you really can't do more than just survive right now, and even just surviving is enough. Even just surviving by itself is giving you soul growth. And better times are coming. When the time comes, you will be ready to step fully into 5D, without later feeling the need to go back to 3D. Because you will have learned your 3D lessons. And when the time comes, I would love to offer my hand and help you step into 5D. Your star brother, Hakann for Era of Light.